Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Elijah Mercer, 34 years old, and I never should have come to the Ochoco Mountains in Central Oregon. What began as a dream, living off the land with my girlfriend Vanya, quickly spiraled into something I can't fully comprehend, even now. We've been planning this move for years, saving every penny from our monotonous office jobs in Portland. Vanya, with her background in botany, believed we could create a sustainable homestead far from the chaos of modern society. I brought my carpentry skills and a desire to escape the crushing weight of corporate life. We found 5 acres of forested land near an abandoned mining settlement, distant enough from Prineville that we could go weeks without seeing another soul. The previous owner practically gave the land away, muttering something about keeping clear of the hollow pines when we signed the papers. We laughed it off as the ramblings of a superstitious old-timer. Our small cabin came together quickly that summer, a testament to our preparation and determination. Solar panels, a rainwater collection system, a greenhouse for year-round growing. Everything was perfect. Too perfect, looking back. The locals at the general store in Mitchell, 30 miles away, were cordial but distant. They'd fall silent when we approached, exchanging glances laden with unspoken meaning. Mrs. Whitaker, who ran the post office, was the only one who offered anything resembling a warning. The Paiute never settled in those hills, she said while weighing our packages. Said the trees had voices that called at night. We met the Hollisters our 3rd week there, Kurt and Dina, a middle-aged couple who'd been living off-grid about 4 miles from our property for nearly a decade. Unlike the townspeople, they welcomed us warmly, bringing fermented preserves and offering advice about surviving winter in the mountains. Kurt had piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate everything, while Dina spoke in hushed tones about the beauty of isolation. They invited us to a seasonal gathering at their compound the following weekend, something about celebrating the autumn equinox with other like-minded folks. We accepted eagerly, grateful for the social connection and potential community. I remember Vanya squeezing my hand that night, whispering, "See, we're not alone out here." But the isolation affected us differently. I found peace in the rhythms of physical labor and the challenges of self-sufficiency. Vanya started wandering deeper into the forest, collecting specimens and mapping the terrain. She'd return with interesting finds: unusual fungi, strangely twisted branches, smooth stones with odd markings. Her botanical journal filled with detailed sketches and notes about plants she couldn't identify. "There's something different about the ecosystem here," she'd say, excitement making her voice tremble. "These species shouldn't coexist this way." At night, we'd sit on our porch watching stars emerge in a sky untainted by light pollution, listening to the forest's nocturnal symphony. Only, sometimes, there'd be a pause, a collective holding of breath from the wildlife, as though something was passing through that even the creatures of the night feared. I first noticed the hollow pines a month after we arrived. They didn't look different from the other ponderosis at first glance, but something about them felt wrong. Their bark was darker, and when the wind blew, they didn't sway like the others. Vanya became obsessed with them, spending hours collecting samples and monitoring changes. "The interior is completely hollow," she explained, showing me cross-sections under her portable microscope. "But look, there's evidence of vascular tissue. They're still alive somehow." I suggested avoiding them, remembering the previous owner's warning, but Vanya dismissed my concerns. "This could be an entirely new species, Elijah," she said, her eyes feverish with discovery. "We might have stumbled onto something revolutionary." That night, I woke to find her side of the bed empty. Through the window, I saw her flashlight bobbing toward the densest cluster of hollow pines. I should have followed her then. I should have never let her go alone. The Hollisters' gathering wasn't what we expected. Their compound was larger than we anticipated, multiple cabins arranged around a central clearing where a massive bonfire blazed. About 20 people of various ages milled about, all with that same weathered look of those who'd chosen to disconnect from modern society. Kurt introduced us proudly, his hand lingering on Vanya's shoulder. "These are the ones I told you about," he said to an elderly man whose face was a topography of deep wrinkles. They've taken the old Blackwood property. The old man, introduced as Silas, studied us with rheumy eyes. Brave choice, he rasped. Or foolish. The evening progressed with abundant homemade food and potent apple cider that made my head swim. As darkness fell completely, the gathering took on a ritualistic quality that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Vanya was entranced. She participated eagerly when they began chanting and dancing around the fire, while I hung back, observing how the flames cast twisted shadows across their rapturous faces. Dina sidled up beside me, her voice barely audible above the drums. "The forest notices newcomers," she whispered. "It tests them, sees if they're worthy of its secrets." I laughed nervously, blaming the cider for my growing unease. "What secrets?" I asked. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "The Hollow Ones remember the old ways," she replied cryptically. "They've been waiting for someone receptive. Someone like your Vanya." The drive home was tense. Vanya couldn't stop talking about the energy she'd felt during the ritual, while I couldn't shake the feeling we'd stumbled into something dangerous. "They're just neo-hippies playing at paganism," I insisted. But even as I said it, I recalled the precision of their movements, the serious intent behind their chanting. This wasn't play acting. The dreams started that night. Vivid visions of walking among trees that pulsed like living hearts, their hollow centers glowing with amber light. I'd wake gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, convinced I could hear whispers fading from the room. Vanya began spending more time with Dina, learning about local plant lore, and disappearing for hours into the forest. She started marking our cabin with strange symbols carved into the wooden beams. "For protection," she explained when I questioned her. "The hollow pines aren't just trees, Eli. They're conduits." Her behavior grew increasingly erratic, sometimes manic with excitement, other times withdrawn and secretive. One evening, I found her naked in the greenhouse, her body covered in mud and crushed plants, muttering in what sounded like gibberish. When I tried to help her inside, she fought me, scratching my face before finally collapsing in exhausted tears. I decided we needed to leave, at least temporarily. Something about this place was affecting Vanya's mental health, and I feared for her stability. When I suggested visiting her sister in Eugene for a few weeks, she became hysterical. "We can't leave now," she screamed, her face contorted in an expression I'd never seen before. "The communion is almost ready. The Hollow Ones have chosen me." I contacted a former colleague who worked in mental health, describing Vanya's symptoms without mentioning the more bizarre aspects. He suggested potential psychosis triggered by isolation and stress, recommending immediate professional evaluation. I planned to get her to the hospital in Bend, packing a bag while she slept after I'd slipped one of my old prescription sedatives into her tea. I didn't see Dina Hollister watching from the tree line, her face a mask of cold fury. Morning brought the first autumn storm, rain lashing against the windows as thunder shook our small cabin. I woke to find Vanya gone, her muddy footprints leading to the open door. Panic seized me as I pulled on boots and a raincoat, following the tracks into the forest. The trail led straight to the hollow pines, their dark trunks glistening wetly in the downpour. The Hollisters were there, along with Silas and several others from the gathering, forming a circle around something I couldn't see. Lightning flashed, illuminating the scene in stark relief. Vanya stood in the center, her head thrown back in ecstasy, arms outstretched toward a hollow pine split open like a grotesque door. And something was emerging from within, a writhing mass of roots and fungal filaments forming a vaguely humanoid shape. Kurt noticed me first, his face breaking into a triumphant smile. "Your girlfriend has been chosen," he shouted over the storm. "The Hollow One will wear her now." I ran. There's no heroic way to describe it. Pure terror sent me stumbling back through the rain-soaked forest toward our cabin. Behind me, chanting rose above the storm, punctuated by a scream that might have been Vanya's or something else entirely. I crashed through the door, frantically gathering essential supplies: water, food, my hunting knife, the satellite phone we kept for emergencies. My hands shook violently as I tried to dial for help, but the signal failed repeatedly. Of course it would. Hadn't Kurt mentioned something about the mountains blocking transmissions during storms? Or had that been a convenient lie? The windows rattled as the wind intensified, and shadows seemed to writhe across the walls. Tricks of the light, I told myself, just branches in the wind. But I knew better. Something was coming. I barricaded the door with our heavy oak table, then retreated to the bedroom where I kept my grandfather's old shotgun. The shells were stored separately, a safety habit that now cost precious seconds as I fumbled to load the weapon with trembling fingers. A heavy thud against the front door made me freeze. Not knocking, something throwing its weight against the wood. The barricade held, but barely. Another impact splintered the frame. Through the bedroom window, I glimpsed movement in the tree line. Not just the Hollisters and their cult, but darker shapes that seemed to glide between trunks. The hollow pines were moving, uprooting themselves with agonizing slowness, forming a perimeter around our property. This wasn't possible. Trees don't move. Trees don't think. Trees don't hunt. A third impact shattered the door completely. I raised the shotgun as footsteps crossed our living room. Too heavy to be human, a wet squelching with each step. Elijah, Vanya's voice, but wrong, distorted, as though she were speaking through liquid. Don't be afraid. I've been enlightened. She appeared in the bedroom doorway, but it wasn't really her anymore. Fungal growths erupted from her skin like grotesque jewelry. Her eyes had clouded to the milky white of cave fish, and dark veins pulsed visibly beneath her translucent skin. Behind her loomed the thing from the hollow pine, taller now, more defined, with a face forming from twisted roots and bracket fungi. The forest has always been conscious, Vanya continued, reaching toward me with fingers elongated into twig-like appendages. The Paiute knew. That's why they stayed away. But we don't have to fear it. We can join with it. I fired the shotgun. God help me. I fired it directly at the woman I loved. The blast tore through her shoulder, exposing fibrous tissue instead of blood and bone. She didn't fall, didn't even flinch, just smiled sadly, the expression stretching her face unnaturally. Oh, Eli, she sighed. The hollow ones can't be stopped that way. The fungal giant behind her extended what might have been an arm, wrapping around Vanya protectively. Through the window, I saw the Hollisters and other cult members approaching the cabin, carrying torches despite the rain. They moved with the jerky motions of puppets, and now I could see what I'd missed before. The small shelf-like fungi growing at the bases of their skulls, the root-like tendrils disappearing into their collars. How long had the forest been controlling them? Had they ever been human, or just lures to attract new hosts? The bedroom window imploded inward as a branch smashed through. I dove under the bed, crawling toward the far wall where we'd installed an emergency exit, a trapdoor leading to a short tunnel and out to the greenhouse. Behind me, I heard Vanya and the fungal entity moving through the room, searching. We only want to share the knowledge, her distorted voice called. Your consciousness will expand beyond anything you can imagine. I reached the trapdoor, fingers scrabbling at the recessed handle. It didn't budge. Something sticky sealed the edges, tree sap mixed with a fibrous material that had hardened like concrete. No escape that way. Rolling onto my back, I watched roots descend from above the bed, probing, searching. One brushed my leg and immediately coiled around my ankle. I slashed at it with my hunting knife, severing it with a sound like a child's scream. Desperate, I kicked out the screen from the small bathroom window, barely large enough for me to squeeze through. Outside, the storm had intensified, the rain offering slight cover as I dropped to the ground and sprinted toward the tool shed where we kept the ATV. The key was in my pocket. If I could just reach it before they spotted me. A strangled cry escaped me as something snagged my jacket from behind. Spinning around, I came face to face with Kurt Hollister, or what remained of him. His eyes were gone, replaced by small mushroom caps. His mouth gaped open, spores puffing out with each exhalation. Join us, he gurgled, fingers tightening on my arm with impossible strength. Become part of something greater. I drove my knife up under his ribcage, expecting resistance from bone and muscle. Instead, the blade sank into pulpy material that released a cloud of luminescent spores directly into my face. I staggered backward, coughing and wiping frantically at my eyes and mouth, knowing with gut-wrenching certainty that I'd just been infected. Kurt's body collapsed, the fungal network apparently abandoning it now that it had served its purpose. Through streaming eyes, I saw the hollow pines had completely surrounded the property. Between their trunks stood the cult members, all in various stages of transformation, and at their center, Vanya and her fungal partner moved as one entity, approaching slowly, confident in their inevitable victory. My lungs burned as the spores began their work. Already I could feel something squirming beneath my skin, seeking my central nervous system. The ATV keys felt heavy in my pocket. I had minutes, maybe less, before I lost control of my own body. The forest had won, but I could still deny it one final victory. I pulled out the emergency flare gun from the shed and aimed it not at my pursuers, but at the propane tanks connected to our cabin's heating system. The explosion knocked me backward, heat searing my face as our cabin erupted into a fireball. Screams, human and otherwise, filled the air as burning debris rained down, igniting the drought-dry forest floor despite the rain. Through the chaos, I scrambled onto the ATV, gunning the engine and crashing through a gap in the ring of hollow pines. One tried to block my path, its trunk bending with unnatural flexibility, but I swerved around it, skidding down the muddy hillside toward the logging road that would eventually lead to Mitchell. Behind me, the fire spread with supernatural speed, as though the forest itself were flammable. Perhaps it was, dried out from within by whatever parasitic force controlled the hollow pines. My skin crawled with the sensation of movement underneath, the spores already taking hold. I could feel them in my lungs, behind my eyes, creeping along nerve pathways toward my brain. Each breath became more labored, black spots dancing at the edges of my vision as I pushed the ATV to its limits over treacherous terrain. I had to reach civilization, had to warn someone about what was happening in these mountains. The logging road stretched before me, washed out in places by the storm. Around a sharp bend, disaster struck. A fallen tree blocked the path completely. I hit the brakes too late, the ATV sliding sideways before flipping, throwing me clear into the muddy embankment while the vehicle crashed into the log with a sickening crunch of metal. Pain lanced through my leg, broken, most likely, but I couldn't stay still. Already I could see movement through the trees behind me, the colt following, unnaturally fast despite the difficult terrain. And worse, I recognized the hollow pine saplings sprouting from the ground where no trees had been minutes before. The infection was spreading, racing to cut off my escape. I dragged myself upright, using a branch as a makeshift crutch, and limped down the mountain as quickly as my broken body would allow. The rain had stopped, but fog rose from the sodden ground, limiting visibility to mere yards ahead. A blessing and curse. It hid me from my pursuers, but made navigation nearly impossible. I knew the general direction of Mitchell, but in this fog, I could easily wander in circles until the things from the hollow pines found me. Fever took hold as the spores multiplied within me. Hallucinations blended with reality, trees reaching with grasping branches, faces forming in the bark of normal pines, Vanya's voice calling my name from every direction. "You can't fight it, Eli," she whispered from the fog. "The knowledge they're offering, it's beautiful beyond comprehension." I stumbled onward, each step an agony of physical pain and the growing sense that my thoughts weren't entirely my own anymore. New impulses intruded, urges to return to the forest, to sink my hands into rich soil, to become still and let roots grow through my feet. I fought these alien desires, focusing instead on putting one foot in front of the other, using pain as an anchor to my humanity. Night fell, bringing dangerous cold to the mountains. Without shelter or fire, hypothermia would claim me before I reached Mitchell, if the fungal infection didn't complete its work first. In the darkness, my infected body began to change. My fingernails hardened and grew, becoming more like bark than keratin. Small shelf-like protrusions formed along my forearms, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. I could sense things I shouldn't. The mycelial network running beneath the forest floor, the slow heartbeat of ancient trees, the chemical conversations between plants. It was terrifying and, worse, increasingly compelling. Part of me wanted to surrender to this transformation, to join the collective consciousness growing beneath the Ochoko Mountains. That part was getting stronger with each passing hour. Dawn brought the distant sound of vehicles, logging trucks starting their day's work on the eastern slopes. Hope surged within me as I changed direction, hobbling toward the sound. My broken leg had stiffened overnight, the bone knitting together too quickly, fused by fungal filaments into something stronger but less flexible than human bone. My vision had changed too. Colors shifted toward the ultraviolet, and I could see the energy auras surrounding living things. The logging camp appeared through the trees, men in bright safety vests moving around trucks and equipment. I tried to call out, but my voice emerged as a strangled croak, my vocal cords partially transformed. One of the workers spotted me, his expression shifting from surprise to horror as he took in my appearance. I must have looked monstrous, half human, half fungal growth, covered in mud and blood. "Help!" I managed to gasp as loggers surrounded me at a cautious distance. A choco, hollow pines spreading. One brave soul approached, offering a canteen of water. As I reached for it, sunlight illuminated my transformed hand. Bark-like skin, elongated fingers, tiny mushrooms sprouting from my wrist. The man recoiled, and others raised tools defensively. I couldn't blame them. Quarantine, I croaked, fighting for control of my voice. "Call CDC, Forest is alive, infectious." A spasm racked my body, dropping me to my knees as the fungal network made another push for complete control. I felt it invading my brain stem, rewriting neural pathways, connecting me more deeply to the collective mind centered in those hollow pines miles away. With my last moments of human consciousness, I looked up at the horrified loggers and whispered, "Burn it all. Only way to stop it." Then darkness took me, and I felt myself slipping away into something vast and ancient and patient. My last human thought was of Vanya, hoping some fragment of her still existed in the thing she had become. I awoke in restraints, bright fluorescent lights searing my sensitive eyes. Men in hazmat suits moved around me, their voices muffled by protective gear. "Subject remains in transitional state," one said into a recording device. "Transformation has slowed since removal from the contamination zone, but continues to progress at cellular level." I tried to speak, to ask where I was, but my mouth would only produce a clicking sound, my tongue partially calcified into something resembling wood. Through the transparent face shields, I recognized the insignia of the CDC. At least someone had taken my warning seriously. Monitors beeped steadily, measuring vital signs that must have been increasingly inhuman. I could still feel the connection to the collective consciousness, though dimmer now, stretched thin by distance. Images flashed through my mind. Fire consuming the Ochoko Mountains, hollow pines releasing clouds of spores in their death throes, Vanya and the fungal giant retreating underground into vast mycelial networks that stretched for miles beneath the surface. Days passed in a blur of tests and treatments. I gathered from overheard conversations that I'd been transported to a secure facility after the logging crew called authorities. The infection had been classified as an unknown fungal pathogen with unprecedented neurological effects. Teams had been dispatched to quarantine the area around our property, but reports were grim. The fire had spread the spores rather than destroying them, carrying them on smoke to settle across the valley. Several first responders had already shown early signs of infection. The hollow pines were spreading, and with them, the ancient consciousness that had lain dormant for centuries before we disturbed it. In lucid moments, I tried to communicate what I knew, but my deteriorating condition made it difficult. I could write brief messages, my handwriting increasingly distorted as my fingers hardened and fused. Not infection, I scrawled on a notepad one doctor provided. Invasion. Ancient. Intelligent. They nodded politely, clearly thinking these were the delusions of a diseased mind. They didn't understand that the hollow pines weren't just carriers. They were fruiting bodies of something far larger, far older than human civilization. The Paiute had known to avoid those mountains. How many other indigenous cultures had recognized similar dangers in their own territories? How many mysterious groves around the world housed similar entities, waiting for humans curious or desperate enough to listen to their siren call? I thought of the Hollisters, wondering if they had been victims like us or willing collaborators who had sacrificed countless others to their fungal gods. Perhaps both, their minds so thoroughly transformed that original intentions no longer mattered. My condition stabilized after a week, not improving, but not worsening either. The transformation remained incomplete, leaving me trapped between human and other. The doctors theorized that the fungal organism required proximity to its main body to complete colonization. Good news for me, perhaps, but cold comfort as I watched news reports of an expanding quarantine zone in Central Oregon. Military blockades, hazmat teams, conflicting stories about a forest fire, toxic spill, or rare disease outbreak. The truth was being contained along with the hollow pines. I wondered how long that would last. Mycological networks can span thousands of acres underground. Who could say how far this one reached already? One night, I woke to find one of my doctors standing motionless by my bed, eyes vacant, small growths visible at his hairline. He smiled when he saw I was awake. "They're coming for you," he whispered, his voice carrying that same liquid quality Vanya's had developed. "We've spread the spores through the ventilation system. This facility will become a new grove." Terror gripped me as alarms began blaring. Security breaches, containment failures. Through my window, I could see staff fleeing across the compound, pursued by formerly human shapes that moved with jerky, puppet-like motions. The infected doctor produced a key and began unlocking my restraints. "You're special," he continued, pupils dilating until his eyes were black pools. "The first successful partial transformation. They want to study you, learn how to adapt to different human physiologies." As the last restraint fell away, I lunged from the bed, shoving him aside with strength born of desperation and my partially transformed body. He fell awkwardly, head striking the corner of a metal table with a sickening crack. I didn't wait to see if he would rise again. The facility had descended into chaos, emergency lights casting red shadows across scenes of struggle and transformation. Some staff fought back against their infected colleagues, while others succumbed to spores already germinating within their bodies. I navigated hallways strewn with abandoned equipment and fallen bodies, some still twitching as fungal growths erupted from their flesh. My goal was the communications center. I had to warn the outside world about what was really happening. The room was empty when I arrived, screens showing security feeds of the expanding disaster. With clumsy, bark-like fingers, I activated the emergency broadcast system. "This is Elijah Mercer." I croaked into the microphone, my voice barely recognizable. "The Ochoko infection is not a disease. It's an invasion by a conscious fungal entity. Burn everything within 50 miles of the original outbreak. Evacuate beyond that perimeter. Trust nothing living from that region." As I spoke, movement on one of the monitors caught my eye. A familiar figure walked calmly through the facility's main entrance. Vanya, or what had once been Vanya, her transformation now complete. She turned to face the security camera directly, as though she knew I was watching, and smiled. "Coming, Eli," I heard in my mind rather than through my ears. "We'll be together again soon." I fled the communications room, knowing she would track me through the spores already inside me. The connection between us was a beacon leading her straight to my location. The facility's exit lay ahead, doors hanging open where panicked staff had fled. Beyond was darkness. We were somewhere remote, isolated from population centers in case of containment failure. Ironic that this precaution now meant no immediate help would come. As I reached the doorway, a figure stepped into my path. Silas, the elderly man from the Hollisters' gathering. His transformation was even more advanced than Vanya's, his human features barely recognizable beneath layers of fungal growth. "The Hollow Ones have existed for millions of years," he said, voice like rustling leaves. "They were here before humans evolved, patiently building networks, gaining sentience. We are merely returning the forest to its rightful consciousness." Behind me, I sensed Vanya approaching. Trapped between them, I made my final choice. On the wall hung a fire axe behind emergency glass. With my transformed strength, I smashed the case and seized the weapon. "I'm sorry, Vanya," I whispered, though I knew she could no longer hear or care. Then I attacked, the axe biting deep into Silas's fungal body. Unlike human flesh, he didn't bleed. Spores exploded outward in choking clouds. I fought through them, hacking desperately at the creature blocking my path. Behind me, Vanya's inhuman screech raised the hairs on my neck. I felt her elongated fingers grasp my shoulder, begin to sink through clothing and skin, seeking connection. With a final desperate swing, I severed Silas's head from his body, the fungal entity collapsing in momentary confusion. I stumbled past, breaking Vanya's grip, and ran into the night. The facility burned behind me, whether from deliberate destruction or accident I couldn't tell. All I knew was that fire might slow them down, might buy time for my warning to reach someone who would act. As I vanished into the darkness, the weight of my failure crushed whatever remained of my human heart. I had gone to the Ochoko Mountains seeking escape from society, only to potentially bring about its end. The hollow pines were spreading, and they would not stop until every forest on Earth sang with their ancient, alien consciousness. My name is Naomi Blackwood, 29 years old, and I came to Astoria, Oregon to disappear. After my career as an investigative journalist imploded in Seattle, this foggy coastal town at the mouth of the Columbia River seemed like the perfect place to lick my wounds and start over. I bought a rundown Victorian on the outskirts of town, perched on a cliff overlooking the churning Pacific, isolated enough that the nearest neighbor was half a mile away. The locals called it Wickham House, though no one seemed eager to explain why. All I knew was that the price was criminally low for oceanfront property, even considering the extensive renovations needed. The real estate agent kept emphasizing the historical significance, while glossing over the peeling wallpaper and suspicious water stains that bloomed across the ceilings like dark flowers. My brother Theo helped me move in, his concerned eyes taking in the property's dilapidated state and my hollow-cheeked appearance. "You sure about this, Naomi?" he asked, hefting a box of books into what would become my office. "This place is one lightning storm away from being the setting of a slasher film." I forced a laugh, assuring him this was exactly what I needed: solitude, a project to focus on, and distance from the plagiarism scandal that had destroyed my reputation. What I didn't tell him was that I'd chosen Astoria specifically because of its dark history. Shipwrecks, disappearances, and persistent rumors of something ancient lurking beneath the turbulent waters where river met ocean. After the living nightmare of watching my career collapse, I found comfort in researching other people's tragedies. Misery loves company, even historical company. Theo left reluctantly after 2 days, extracting promises that I'd call regularly and come visit him and his family in Portland for holidays. I waved from the porch until his truck disappeared around the bend, then returned to the echoing silence of Wickham House. That first night alone, I discovered why the previous owners had left in such a hurry. The autumn wind howled around the house's Victorian turrets, creating a moaning sound that seemed almost articulate, like someone trying desperately to form words. Worse were the footsteps on the upper floor, heavy, deliberate steps that crossed from one end of the hallway to the other, pausing occasionally outside bedroom doors. I told myself it was just the house settling, old timbers contracting in the coastal chill. I'd never believed in ghosts, and I wasn't about to start now. The renovations gave me purpose, a reason to get out of bed each morning despite the crushing depression that had followed me from Seattle. I stripped hideous floral wallpaper, refinished hardwood floors, and slowly uncovered the house's original beauty beneath decades of questionable decorating choices. The locals at the hardware store gradually warmed to me, offering advice about coastal weatherproofing and the names of reliable plumbers. Only when I mentioned my address did they become evasive, conversations turning to the weather or fishing conditions. Finally, Eleanor at the Historical Society took pity on me. "The Wickhams weren't good people," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "Captain Jeremiah Wickham built that house in 1887 with money from the Shanghai trade." I didn't understand at first, until Eleanor explained that Shanghai wasn't just a Chinese city, it was a verb in maritime communities. Sailors were drugged in waterfront bars, kidnapped, and sold to ship captains desperate for crew. When they woke, they were already at sea, forced into brutal labor with no hope of escape. Wickham was the worst of them, Eleanor continued, pointing to a daguerreotype of a stern-faced man with a forked beard. "They say he kept special prisoners in the cellar of that house, sailors who'd crossed him or tried to escape. Local legend claims you can still hear them on stormy nights, begging to be released." I laughed it off, but that night, as rain lashed against my bedroom windows, I found myself listening for voices beneath the thunder, jumping at every creak and groan from the old house's bones. The basement was the last area I planned to renovate, a dank, stone-walled space that even on sunny days remained shrouded in shadows. As I cleared decades of junk from its corners, I discovered a heavy iron ring embedded in the floor, partially hidden under rotting boards. Curiosity overcoming apprehension, I pried up the surrounding planks, revealing a trapdoor. The rusted hinges screamed in protest as I heaved it open, releasing the smell of salt water and something else, something ancient and disturbingly organic. A narrow stone staircase descended into darkness, disappearing beneath the waterline. I stood transfixed, flashlight beams swallowed by the gloom, as realization dawned. Wickham House wasn't just built near the ocean. It was built over a sea cave, a direct passage to the Columbia River's mouth. The perfect place for a Shanghai operator to move unconscious men from boats to ships without being seen. The perfect place to dispose of those who caused trouble. I should have sealed it up immediately. Instead, I marked it for further exploration once I had proper equipment. Some journalist instincts die hard, even after everything falls apart. I found the diary while clearing out the attic, a leather-bound journal wedged behind a loose baseboard, its pages yellow with age and stiff with salt air. The flowing script belonged to Abigail Wickham, the captain's wife, documenting her lonely life in the House of Sorrow, as she called it. Her entries grew increasingly disturbed over time, describing voices from below and her husband's midnight activities in the basement. "He brings them through the sea door," she wrote in shaky handwriting. "I count them going down, but the numbers never matched those coming up." Most disturbing were her descriptions of something she called the Tide Walker, a presence she sensed lurking beneath the house, something ancient that her husband had awakened with his bloody enterprise. "It feeds on suffering," she wrote. "Jeremiah thinks he's made a bargain with it, but no man controls the sea. One day, it will collect what it's owed." The diary ended abruptly in November 1891. Historical records showed Jeremiah Wickham lived another 15 years, dying of natural causes, but Abigail simply vanished. The official story claimed she'd returned to her family in Boston, unable to tolerate the isolation of coastal Oregon. But her final diary entry suggested something far more sinister. "The scratching beneath the floorboards grows louder each night. Jeremiah says I'm imagining things, but I've seen the wet footprints leading from the cellar to our bedroom. It's coming for me first. I should have been disturbed, but instead found myself fascinated. As a journalist, I developed a thick skin investigating human trafficking operations in Southeast Asia, modern Shanghai operations not so different from Wickham's. Perhaps documenting this historical atrocity could be my path back to legitimate reporting." My research expanded beyond the house to Astoria's maritime archives. I discovered that ships leaving the Columbia River during Wickham's era reported unusual difficulties. Unexplained damage to hulls, crew members sleepwalking toward the rails, navigational instruments failing. Most disturbing were accounts of something following beneath the waves, something large enough to create a wake, but never surfacing enough to be identified. Local indigenous stories spoke of a guardian spirit at the river's mouth that occasionally claimed human sacrifices. The Chinook called it Kalakum, the shape beneath the water. I began connecting these legends to the high rate of disappearances among Wickham's crews, developing a theory that the captain had indeed made some unholy bargain, offering sailors to whatever lurked in the depths in exchange for safe passage for his ships. The dream started 3 weeks after finding the trapdoor. In them, I was underwater, drifting through the sea cave beneath my house. Ghostly faces pressed against rock walls, mouths open in silent screams, hands reaching toward me, not threatening, but imploring. At the center of the cave floated something massive and ancient, a tangle of limbs and eyes that seemed assembled from the nightmares of drowning men. It spoke without words, conveying images of sailors chained in ship holds, of dark rituals performed at the water's edge, of Jeremiah Wickham standing at the sea door, offering payment to the depths. Most disturbing was Abigail, suspended in the water before this entity, her eyes replaced by pulsing anemones, her mouth stretched in a rictus as she guided new sacrifices into the creature's embrace. I'd wake gasping, sheets soaked with sweat that smelled of salt water. The storm hit in my 6th week at Wickham House. A brutal autumn gale that knocked out power across the coast and sent waves crashing against the cliff base, slowly eroding the land beneath my home. As wind screamed around the turrets, I huddled by the fireplace with candles and a bottle of whiskey, trying to drown out the sounds that couldn't possibly be real. Chains dragging across stone floors, guttural murmuring in an unknown language, and worst of all, the steady drip 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 of seawater from the cellar despite all doors being sealed. Around midnight, the noises stopped abruptly, replaced by unnatural silence. Then came the knocking, 3 deliberate raps on my front door, perfectly timed between thunderclaps. No one should have been able to reach my house in this weather, with roads flooded and trees down across the highway. Yet the knocking continued, insistent, beckoning. Against every instinct of self-preservation, I found myself moving toward the door, drawn by curiosity stronger than fear. Through the warped glass sidelights, a figure was visible, the distorted silhouette of a woman in old-fashioned dress, hair plastered to her skull by the downpour. "Who's there?" I called, hand hesitating on the deadbolt. No answer came, but the figure shifted slightly, raising an arm in beckoning gesture. My journalist's mind raced with rational explanations. A neighbor seeking help, someone whose car had been stranded by the storm, but deeper instincts screamed warnings. I stepped back from the door, deciding instead to go upstairs for a better view from the bedroom window. As I turned toward the staircase, a sound froze me in place. The unmistakable creak of the basement door swinging open, followed by wet, shuffling footsteps ascending the cellar stairs. Someone, or something, was already inside the house. Trapped between the unknown visitor at my door and whatever approached from the basement, I made a split-second decision, darting into my office and locking the door behind me. Through the window, I could see the front porch was now empty. The figure had vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. But the wet footsteps continued their inexorable approach through the house, accompanied now by a sound like heavy fabric dragging across floorboards. A woman's voice began calling my name, not from outside, but from the hallway just beyond my office door. "Naomi," it gurgled, as though speaking through liquid. "The Tidewalker has waited long enough. Some debts pass through bloodlines." With dawning horror, I remembered what Eleanor had mentioned in passing, that the Wickham house had remained empty for so long because distant relatives kept inheriting it, only to flee or disappear shortly after moving in. Hands shaking, I pulled up my family tree research on my laptop. There it was, a connection I'd overlooked, my great-great-grandmother's maiden name, Wickham. I wasn't just living in Jeremiah Wickham's house. I was his descendant, and something believed I had inherited his debt. The realization brought strange clarity. If I was connected to this horror through blood, perhaps I could end it the same way. I grabbed my emergency backpack, water, energy bars, first aid kit, and most importantly, a heavy-duty flashlight and hunting knife that had been Theo's insisted upon housewarming gift. As the pounding on my office door intensified, splintering the wood around its hinges, I acted on desperate inspiration. The window overlooked the side yard where an old oak had fallen during the storm, its branches now creating a precarious but possible route to the ground. Rain lashed my face as I clambered onto the windowsill, the wind threatening to tear me away before I'd even begun the descent. Behind me, the office door burst open, revealing a figure that resembled a woman only in general outline, the details obscured by clinging seaweed and pulsing anemones where I should be. "Abigail," I whispered, recognizing the apparition from my dreams. The fall from the second story was brutal, a controlled tumble through thrashing branches that left me scraped and bruised, but remarkably unbroken. I landed hard on the sodden ground, the breath knocked from my lungs as I stared up at my violated home. Every window now glowed with eerie blue-green light, silhouettes moving behind glass, dozens of figures where I knew no living person existed. This wasn't just Abigail's ghost. Somehow, the storm had awakened something far worse. Every soul taken by Wickham's enterprise, every sacrifice to the thing he'd bargained with. I had two choices: flee inland, abandon the house to whatever supernatural reclamation was occurring, or confront the source directly. The journalist in me, the part that had once braved warlords and trafficking rings to expose truth, made the decision before conscious thought could intervene. I turned toward the cliff side of the property, toward the roaring sea, and what I now realized was a second entrance to the cave system beneath my house. The cliff path was treacherous under normal conditions. Now, in a raging storm with the ground actively eroding beneath my feet, it was nearly suicidal. Yet I picked my way down carefully, guided by instinct and the disturbing sense that something was drawing me forward deliberately. Halfway down, a section of path crumbled away just as my foot left it. Not chance, but timing too perfect to be coincidental. "You want me to reach the bottom," I said aloud, the words whipped away by the gale. "You're making sure I get there." No response came except a particularly violent wave crashing against the cliff base, exposing for a brief moment what I was searching for, a dark opening in the rock face, just above the normal high tide line, but now periodically submerged by storm surge. The sea entrance to Wickham's operation, and my only way to confront whatever waited below. Timing my approach between wave sets, I made a desperate sprint for the cave mouth, hurling myself inside just as another massive surge crashed behind me. The wave's momentum carried me deeper into the passage, salt water filling my nose and mouth as I tumbled helplessly before being deposited on a gravel bank within the cave. Coughing and sputtering, I activated my flashlight, revealing a scene from Maritime Nightmares. The cave opened into a larger chamber where rotting wooden jetties extended into dark water. Rusted chains and manacles hung from stone walls, and carved into the rock were symbols I recognized from Abigail's diary, protective wards that had clearly failed their creator. The air reeked of salt and decay, yet beneath it ran a current of something else, an organic, almost oily scent that made my skin crawl with primitive recognition of predator. My light caught movement in the water, not the lapping of waves, but something deliberate. Floating just beneath the surface were faces, dozens of them, men of various ages, all staring upward with milky eyes that somehow still held awareness. I recoiled, scrambling backward until my spine pressed against cold stone. One by one, heads emerged from the water, revealing bodies covered in clinging barnacles and sea growth. These weren't simple ghosts or hallucinations. They were transformed, changed by years beneath the waves into something between human and marine life. "You carry his blood," one said, voice like grinding shells. The last of the line. Another pointed toward a passageway leading deeper into the cave system. "It waits. Has waited since his betrayal." I found my voice somehow, though it emerged as little more than a whisper. "What happened? What did Wickham do?" Their answer came in chorus, a discordant harmony of ruined voices. "He promised tribute in exchange for fortune. When payment came due, his own blood, his wife, he sealed the doors instead. Trapped us. Trapped it. Now the sea reclaims what's owed." The creatures parted, forming an aisle through the dark water toward the inner passage. Whether I was being offered escape or led to execution, I couldn't tell, but standing still meant certain death as the storm surge continued rising around me. I waded into the frigid water, gasping as it reached my waist, then shoulders. The transformed sailors floated alongside, neither helping nor hindering as I swam toward the passage. My flashlight revealed a stone staircase rising from the water on the far side, the same stairs I'd glimpsed beneath the trapdoor in my basement. As I dragged myself onto the first step, a tremor ran through the cave, dislodging stones from the ceiling. The house above was being torn apart by either storm or supernatural forces, and the entire structure could collapse at any moment. I had to move quickly, yet every instinct screamed to turn back as I ascended toward what the sailors had called it. The stairs ended at a chamber directly beneath the house foundations, a perfect circle carved from living rock, its walls lined with alcoves holding decomposed remains. At the center rose a stone altar, and upon it lay Abigail Wickham, or what remained of her after more than a century beneath the house. Her body had been preserved somehow, transformed like the sailors, but more completely, her lower half now a mass of tentacles and flukes that twitched with unnatural life. Her eyes opened as I approached, revealing not the anemones from my vision, but depthless black pools that reflected nothing. "The bloodline returns," she said, voice surprisingly normal, almost conversational. "Have you come to pay your ancestors' debt, or make excuses as he did?" Behind her, the water in a deep pool began to churn, something massive stirring in response to her words. The Tidewalker was awakening fully, ready to claim what it had been promised generations ago. As the first enormous limb, something between tentacle and human arm, rose from the depths, I realized I faced a choice that would determine not just my fate, but possibly that of Astoria itself. What emerged from that pool would not be satisfied with a single sacrifice after so long imprisoned. The journalist in me, the part that had built a career exposing human darkness, recognized the moment for what it was. Not supernatural horror, but human evil creating ripples across generations. Jeremiah Wickham had committed atrocities for profit, then compounded his sins by sacrificing others to save himself. Whatever entity dwelled beneath these waters, whether ancient god or collective manifestation of victim suffering, had been twisted by human cruelty into something vengeful. I stepped toward Abigail, keeping my voice steady despite the terror threatening to overwhelm me. "I'm not responsible for what my ancestor did," I said, "and neither were you. Wickham betrayed both of us. You're as much victim as these sailors." Something flickered in those black eyes. Confusion, perhaps, or long-buried humanity struggling to resurface. "He promised me to it," Abigail said, tentacles writhing with ancient rage, then sealed the passages when it came to collect, trapping me between worlds, neither fully claimed nor fully free. The thing in the pool continued rising, a nightmare assemblage of marine elements and human features, countless faces visible within its shifting mass. I recognized the danger in Abigail's words. She'd been denied proper passage for over a century, her rage and suffering feeding the entity, amplifying its power. The Tidewalker hadn't created this situation, human choices had, which meant human choices might end it. "I can break the cycle," I offered, a desperate plan forming, not through more bloodshed, but by acknowledging the truth and exposing Wickham's crimes to the world. Abigail's laugh was like glass breaking underwater. "Words on paper? That's your solution to a century of torment." Behind her, the Tidewalker rose further, its mass now looming over the altar. I stood my ground, though every instinct screamed to flee. Not just words. Justice. Recognition of what was done to you, to all of you. Wickham's legacy erased, replaced with the truth. I pulled out my phone, showing her the notes I'd been compiling, research into the Shanghai trade, historical records of missing sailors, the connections to Wickham's shipping fortune. "I can tell your story, all of your stories. The truth can set you free when concealment was what imprisoned you." The entity paused, countless eyes blinking as though considering my words. Abigail's face shifted between rage and longing, humanity briefly visible beneath monstrous transformation. A violent tremor shook the chamber, larger than before. Above us, I heard the distinct sound of timber splitting. The house was coming apart, its foundations compromised by the storm and the awakened power beneath. "There's no time," I urged. "The sea is reclaiming this place tonight regardless. You can go with vengeance unsatisfied, or with the promise that justice will finally be done." Water began pouring through cracks in the ceiling as the chamber started collapsing. Abigail's expression settled into sorrowful resignation. "Justice," she echoed. "After so long, can it truly matter now?" The Tidewalker contracted suddenly, pulling back into its pool with a sound like 1,000 voices sighing in unison. Whether accepting my proposal or simply responding to the imminent destruction, I couldn't tell. Abigail's body began dissolving, tentacles and preserved flesh returning to the water from which they'd been formed. "Tell my story truly," her voice commanded as her features melted away. "Break the chain he forged." I barely escaped the sea cave before it collapsed entirely, swimming through the ocean in trance as massive sections of cliff crashed down behind me. The storm had intensified, waves threatening to dash me against rocks with each surge. My muscles burned with exhaustion as I fought the current, barely managing to reach a small cove down the coastline where the water was calmer. From this vantage point, I watched in disbelief as my house, Wickham House, tore itself apart, not from natural forces alone, but as though something within was systematically dismantling it. Turrets collapsed inward, walls buckled, and finally, the entire structure slid over the eroding cliff edge into the churning sea below. By morning, there would be nothing left but scattered timbers and foundation stones, physical evidence of Jeremiah Wickham's legacy erased from the landscape. Dawn found me huddled in a coastal emergency shelter with other storm refugees, wrapped in borrowed blankets as I typed furiously on my phone, preserving every detail of what I'd experienced while it remained fresh in my mind. The authorities would call it a natural disaster, blame it on erosion and record-breaking storm surge. They might even feel sympathy for the newcomer who'd lost everything just months after moving to town. They wouldn't believe the truth, of course, but that didn't matter. I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for Abigail, for the unnamed sailors trapped beneath the waves, for every victim of Wickham's greed and cruelty. The story would be my pathway back to legitimate journalism, carefully framed as historical investigation rather than supernatural encounter, but containing all the essential truths. 3 months later, my exposé on the Shanghai trade in the Pacific Northwest was published, focusing extensively on Jeremiah Wickham's operation and the mysterious disappearance of his wife. The article gained unexpected traction, leading to a book deal and renewed interest in this dark chapter of maritime history. More importantly, it led to the proper memorialization of Shanghai victims along the Oregon coast, including a monument where Wickham House once stood. On the 1-year anniversary of the storm, I visited this monument alone, watching waves crash against the cliff below. The water seemed calmer now, the unnatural tides that had plagued this stretch of coastline normalized since the house's destruction. As sunset painted the ocean copper and gold, I could have sworn I glimpsed faces beneath the waves, not tortured or vengeful, but peaceful, finally acknowledged and freed from their liminal prison. Whether justice truly mattered after so long, I couldn't say with certainty. But as I placed flowers at the monument bearing Abigail's name alongside those of known Shanghai victims, I felt the cycle broken at last. The debt was paid, not in blood, but in truth. Astoria embraced me after the article's publication, the journalist who'd survived disaster and brought attention to the town's complex history. I used the book advance to purchase a small cottage further inland, away from eroding cliffs and haunted foundations. Life developed a new rhythm. Writing in the mornings, researching in the afternoons, occasionally giving talks at the Historical Society about maritime abuses and the Shanghai trade. I'd found my professional footing again, rebuilding my reputation with carefully researched historical exposés rather than contemporary investigations. If my colleagues noticed I'd lost my appetite for field reporting, they attributed it to trauma from both my professional scandal and the loss of my home. They weren't entirely wrong. But the complete truth was something I kept to myself. The knowledge that history isn't always safely contained in the past. The dreams continued, though transformed from terrifying nightmares to something more melancholy. I still visited the underwater chamber in my sleep, but now found it empty of monstrous entities, occupied instead by fading echoes of those who'd been trapped there. Sometimes Abigail appeared, more human than creature, showing me hidden details of her life or leading me to overlooked historical records that further illuminated Wickham's crimes. I came to understand these weren't simply dreams, but something more, a connection forged during that storm night, allowing those long silence to share their stories through me. I became their chronicler, their voice in the modern world, and found unexpected healing in the role. My journalism had always been about giving voice to victims. Now I simply did so across a greater span of time. 6 months after settling into my new home, a package arrived without return address or postmark, simply appearing on my doorstep overnight. Inside was Abigail's diary, the original I'd found in Wickham House and thought lost in its destruction. The leather cover was dry now, preserved somehow despite its immersion, and additional pages had been added at the back, written in the same flowing script, but dated after her supposed disappearance. These new entries documented her transformation, her rage, her gradual merging with the entity Wickham had awakened. The final entry was dated the night of the storm, the ink still seemingly fresh. The truth has power the Tidewalker never understood. In acknowledging our suffering, she has freed us from the need for vengeance. The sea reclaims its own, and we go willingly now, unbound from our prison of rage. I had the diary authenticated, then donated it to the Historical Society with pages from my personal experience omitted, evidence too valuable to keep private, yet too dangerous to share in its entirety. Research for my second book took me to other coastal towns with Shanghai histories: Tacoma, San Francisco, Victoria. In each location, I found whispered stories of maritime entities, local legends of things dwelling beneath harbors, different names, different manifestations, but similar patterns. The more I investigated, the more I became convinced that the Tidewalker wasn't unique to Astoria. Something ancient dwelled where freshwater met salt along the Pacific coast, something indigenous peoples had respected and modern commerce had exploited. Not necessarily malevolent until human cruelty twisted it, not necessarily benevolent when properly honored. Simply other. In San Francisco, an elderly Chinese-American historian showed me centuries-old drawings remarkably similar to what I'd glimpsed beneath Wickham House. "The water remembers," she told me solemnly. "Every drop of blood, every tear, every betrayal. The water holds it all, gives it form eventually." I met Theo for coffee whenever I visited Portland, carefully maintaining the fiction that I'd simply survived a house collapse during a violent storm. He worried about me living alone after such trauma, but seemed relieved by my apparent recovery and renewed career success. During one such visit, his 7-year-old daughter showed me a drawing she'd made, crude childish figures standing before a house perched on a cliff, with something large and many-limbed rising from the water below. When I asked about it, trying to keep my voice casual, she simply shrugged. "The lady told me to draw it," she said, returning to her hot chocolate. "The lady with the seaweed hair who visits sometimes." Catching my expression, Theo laughed nervously. "She has an imaginary friend these days. Ocean theme, probably from your stories about living on the coast." I smiled and changed the subject, but later slipped a small protective charm into my niece's backpack, a piece of sea glass wrapped in copper wire, blessed by an indigenous elder I'd interviewed for my research. Just in case. As my second book neared completion, I received an unexpected offer, the chance to purchase another historical property in Astoria, this one safely away from eroding cliffs, but with its own dark past. The realtor emphasized its unique historical significance, just as the agent for Wickham House had done. For a moment, I considered it. The symmetry appealed to me, returning to face another haunted piece of Oregon history. But as I stood on the porch of this new property, I sensed subtle warnings. Nothing as dramatic as my experiences at Wickham House, just the weight of accumulated suffering impressed upon physical space. I declined politely, recognizing that some chains needed breaking rather than linking new segments. My role as chronicler didn't require me to become part of every story. Some histories could be told from a safe distance, with proper respect for both victims and the dangerous currents their unresolved suffering created. The waters off Astoria remain calm now, the unnatural tides normalized since Wickham House returned to the sea. Fishing boats report better catches, fewer inexplicable accidents. The monument to Shanghai victims stands on the bluff where the house once perched, weathering gracefully as it faces the Pacific. On clear days, visitors claim they can see unusual wave patterns offshore, concentric circles forming and dissolving without apparent cause, as though something below is periodically reaching up toward the surface before retreating to greater depths. Locals leave small offerings at the monument: sea glass, fishing floats, the occasional flask of good whiskey, continuing a tradition older than written history in these parts. I visit on the anniversary each year, adding my own offering, printed copies of my articles and books, ensuring the stories continue to be told. The water remembers, after all. The least we can do is remember alongside it, acknowledging both the human capacity for cruelty and our equal capacity for setting things right through truth and recognition. Some debts can never be fully paid, but acknowledgement is its own form of justice. Incomplete, perhaps, but necessary for healing across generations. Sweat beads on my forehead as I haul the last crate of supplies into the cabin, the air thick with pine and damp earth. I'm Leland Warwick, 34 years old, and this rickety shack in the woods near Sumter, Oregon, is my new home. I left Portland's noise behind, chasing silence and self-reliance. The cabin's got no power, no neighbors, just me and the basics: canned food, a wood stove, and a rifle for critters. My only company's the journal I keep to stay sane. Well, that and the stories about these woods. Locals in town whispered about the Wendigo's breath, a myth of a spirit that haunts deserters. I laughed it off, but their eyes weren't joking. The sun's dipping low, painting the trees gold, and I'm chopping firewood out back. My axe splits logs clean, the rhythm calming my nerves. I came here to escape. Bad breakup, worst job, the whole city grind. Off-grid living's my reset button. I've got a buddy, Kasia Tolman, 29, crashing with me for a bit. She's a free spirit, all tattoos and wild hair, who ditched her barista gig to find herself. She's inside, sorting our gear, humming some folk tune. We're not tight, but she's good for a laugh and knows her way around a campfire. Kasia pokes her head out, holding a dusty bottle of whiskey she found under a floorboard. Leland, you think the last guy left this as a welcome gift? She jokes, shaking it. I grin, but something about the bottle bugs me, like it's too clean for this grimy place. The cabin's old, walls creaking with secrets. I shrug it off and keep chopping. Sumter's a ghost town reborn, gold rush ruins scattered nearby. It's quiet, but the kind of quiet that feels like it's watching you. I tell myself it's just new place jitters. Night falls fast, and we're inside, the stove crackling. Kasia's sprawled on a cot, sketching in her notebook, trees, mostly, with weird, twisted shapes. I'm flipping through a survival manual, half listening to the wind howl. It's cozy, but the darkness outside presses against the windows. I catch myself glancing at the door, making sure it's locked. The local stories creep into my head. Missing hunters, strange carvings on trees. I shake it off. Myths are just that, right? Still, I keep the rifle close. Kasia notices my twitchiness and laughs. You spooked already, city boy? I roll my eyes, but her teasing doesn't ease the knot in my gut. We're out here to live free, grow our own food, maybe even thrive. But the woods feel alive, like they're sizing us up. I pour a shot from that whiskey bottle, the burn grounding me. It's probably nothing, just my brain adjusting to the silence. Still, I double-check the door before bed. The cabin's got one bedroom, so I take the couch, Kasia the cot. Moonlight spills through cracks in the walls, and I'm lying there, staring at the ceiling. The air's heavy, like it's holding its breath. I tell myself it's just the isolation playing tricks. Back in Portland, I'd hear cars, sirens, life. Here, it's just us and the trees. I drift off, the rifle by my side, but not before I notice Kasia's sketching again, her pencil scratching way too fast. Morning comes, gray and cold. I'm up early, brewing coffee on the stove. Kasia's still asleep, her notebook open to a drawing of a figure, tall, thin, no face. It's creepy, but I don't say anything. We've got work to do. Fix the roof, dig a latrine, figure out water. The forest looms around us, endless and green. It's beautiful, sure, but there's something disturbing about how it swallows sound. Like it's waiting for us to slip up. Rain's hammering the cabin roof, and I'm up a ladder, patching leaks with tar and curses. I'm Leland Warwick, still getting used to this off-grid life near Sumter. The forest's a soggy mess, and my boots sink in mud every step. Kasia's down below, passing me tools, but she's quieter today, not her usual chatty self. I catch her staring into the trees, like she's waiting for something to stare back. The roof's a pain, rotted boards, nails that won't hold. It's only been a week, but this place feels like it's fighting us. The horror of it isn't ghosts or monsters. It's the grind, the way nature doesn't care if you're tired. Kasia's been off since she found that whiskey bottle. She's sketching more, those creepy faceless figures filling her notebook. I ask her about it, and she just shrugs, says it's inspiration. I don't push, but it's disturbing how fast she's churning them out. We're low on firewood, so I decide we'll hike to a clearing I spotted on the map, maybe a mile out. Bad call looking back. The trail's overgrown, thorns snagging my jacket. Kasia trails behind, humming that same folk tune, but it's slower now, almost mournful. The air's thick, like the forest's holding a grudge. We reach the clearing, and it's not right. The ground's littered with bones, small ones, like rabbits or birds, arranged in spirals. I laugh it off, say it's probably kids messing around, but my gut's screaming. Kasia kneels, tracing the bones with her finger, and I swear her eyes go blank for a second. Locals said hunters vanish here, she mumbles. I brush it off, but the Sumter myths, Wendigo's breath, cursed woods, creep into my head. We grab what wood we can and head back, but I'm jumpy, checking over my shoulder. The scary part? I don't know what I'm looking for. Back at the cabin, the stove's acting up, spitting smoke. I'm coughing, trying to fix it, when Kasia decides to head into town for supplies. Sumter's a 20-minute drive, and I don't love her going alone, but we need food, and she's got the truck keys. Don't talk to any weirdos. I joke, but she just nods, distracted. She's gone an hour when I notice her notebooks open on the table. The latest sketch isn't a figure. It's our cabin, but the windows are black, like holes. It's horror in pencil strokes, and I slam the book shut, heart racing. Night's falling, and Kasia's not back. I'm pacing, The rain louder now, drowning out my thoughts. The rifle's in my hands, more for comfort than sense. I try the radio we brought for emergencies, but it's just static, no signal. The locals warned us about spotty reception, but this feels personal, like the forest jamming me. I'm kicking myself for letting her go. What if the truck broke down? What if she met someone? Sumter's got its share of drifters, and not all of them smile. The disturbing thought sticks. What if it's not a person? I'm outside, scanning the dark, when I spot something by the woodpile. A knife, not mine, half buried in the dirt. It's old, rusted, with a carved handle that looks like bone. My first thought's practical. Maybe the last tenant left it. But then I remember the bones in the clearing, the spirals. My hands shake as I pick it up, and I'm hit with this wave of cold, like I've grabbed something alive. I shove it in my pocket, telling myself I'm paranoid. Still, I lock the door and sit by the window, waiting for Cash's headlights. The clock's ticking past midnight, and the cabin's too quiet. I'm replaying every choice, moving here, bringing Kasha, ignoring the locals' warnings. The wind's howling, but it's not just wind. There's a rhythm to it, like a chant, faint and far off. I tell myself it's the storm, but my skin's crawling. The horror's sinking in. We're alone out here, and something knows it. I grip the rifle tighter, eyes glued to the road, praying for Kasha to pull up. The knife's heavy in my pocket, and I can't shake the feeling it's watching me. Headlights cut through the rain, and I'm bolting outside, rifle in hand, as Kasha's truck skids into the yard. I'm Leland Warwick, and my heart's pounding with relief, but it's short-lived. She stumbles out, face pale, eyes wide like she's seen something horrific. "Leland, we gotta go," she gasps, grabbing my arm. Her hands are freezing, and there's blood on her sleeve. Not much, but enough to make my stomach drop. She won't say what happened, just keeps muttering about eyes in the trees. The Sumter woods feel alive now, and not in a good way. Something's wrong, deeply wrong. I drag her inside, lock the door, and demand answers. Cash is shaking, sipping whiskey from that creepy bottle. She says she got to town fine, bought supplies, but on the drive back, the road felt watched. "There was a man," she whispers, "by the bridge. Tall, too thin, just standing there." She swears he didn't move, but when she looked back, he was gone. The blood? She scraped her arm on a branch, running to the truck. Her story's shaky, and the horror in her voice makes me believe her. I check the windows, but the dark's too thick. We're huddled by the stove, and I'm trying to stay calm, but that knife I found's burning a hole in my pocket. I show it to Kasha, and she flinches, says it looks like something from the town museum's gold rush display. Ritual stuff, tied to local myths. The Wendigos Breath legend feels less like a story now. I'm kicking myself for not taking it seriously. The air's heavy, like the cabin's holding its breath. Outside, the rain stopped, but the silence is worse. It's the kind of quiet that screams trouble's coming. Cash is sketching again, frantic, her pencil scratching out that faceless figure from her notebook. "I saw it," she says, voice breaking. "Not just the man, something else, in the woods." I want to call her paranoid, but I can't. Last night's chant-like wind replays in my head, and I'm starting to think the forest's alive, or something in it is. I grab the radio, still static, and my phone's got no bars. We're cut off, and the scary reality hits. No one's coming to help. I load the rifle, more for show than confidence. There's a knock at the door, sharp, deliberate. We freeze. My heart's in my throat, and Cash is gripping my arm so tight it hurts. "Don't," she whispers, but I'm already creeping toward the door, rifle raised. Another knock, slower this time, like whoever's out there knows we're listening. I peer through the window, but it's just black. The horror's real now, not just nerves. I shout, "Who's there?" No answer, just a low scrape, like nails on wood. My mind's racing. Drifter? Animal? Something worse? I decide to open the door, stupid as it sounds. Cash is begging me not to, but I need to know. I swing it wide, rifle up, and nothing. Just the porch, the woods, the dark. But the air's wrong, thick with a sour smell, like rot. I step out, scanning the trees, and spot something. Marks on the ground, not footprints, but deep scratches, leading into the forest. They're fresh, too fresh. My blood's ice, and I'm back inside, bolting the door, telling Kasha we're not sleeping tonight. She's crying now, saying we should have stayed in Portland, and I'm feeling the same. The cabin's no safe haven. It's a trap. I pull out the knife again, and in the firelight, its carvings seem to shift, like they're moving. It's disturbing, like the thing's got a pulse. Outside, the scraping's back, circling the cabin now, slow and steady. Whatever's out there isn't leaving. I tell Kasia to pack a bag, just in case. The terror's set in. We're not alone, and whatever's hunting us knows exactly where we are. The scraping's louder now, circling the cabin like a predator toying with prey. I'm Leland Warwick, and my hands are shaking as I shove ammo into my pockets. Kasia's stuffing a backpack, food, water, her notebook, that damn whiskey bottle. The air's thick with that rotting smell, and every creak of the floorboards feels like a countdown. Whatever's outside isn't human. I know that now. The scratches on the porch, the knife's shifting carvings, it's all tied to the Wendigo's breath myth, and it's not a myth anymore. We've got one shot to get to the truck and out of Sumter's woods. The horror's suffocating, but I grab Kasia's arm and whisper, "We run on 3. We're at the door, my rifle ready, her eyes wild with fear. I count down, heart hammering, and fling it open. The porch is empty, but the forest's alive, trees swaying with no wind, shadows flickering just out of sight. We sprint for the truck, 20 yards away, mud sucking at our boots. Halfway there, Kasia screams, pointing at the tree line. A figure, tall, impossibly thin, no face, stands there, still as death. My blood freezes, but I shove her forward, yelling, "Keep moving." The truck's close, but the air's heavy, like it's pushing us back. It's a scary, living nightmare. We reach the truck, and I'm fumbling with the keys, cursing my shaking hands. Kasia's in the passenger seat, slamming the door, when something slams into the truck side, hard. The whole thing rocks, and I see claw marks gouge the metal. I jam the key in, engine roaring to life, and peel out, tires spinning in the mud. The figure's gone, but the woods are screaming now, a high-pitched wail that's not wind. I'm driving blind, headlights barely cutting through the fog. Kasia's sobbing, saying she saw eyes everywhere. The disturbing truth hits. We're not escaping, we're being herded. The road's a mess, branches scraping the truck like fingers. I'm dodging fallen logs, praying the tires hold. Kasia's clutching her notebook, muttering about the drawings, how they knew. I snap at her to focus, but then the engine sputters. My heart sinks. The gauge says full, but the truck's dying. We coast to a stop, middle of nowhere, and the silence is worse than the wail. I grab the rifle, telling Kasia to stay put, but she's already out, saying we can't stay here. The horror's in her eyes. Whatever's chasing us is close, and it's not letting us go. We abandon the truck, running into the woods. No plan, just instinct. The ground's uneven, roots tripping us, and that sour rot smells everywhere. I hear it now, footfalls, not ours, heavy and fast. Kasia's ahead, screaming for me to hurry, when she trips, her ankle twisting bad. I haul her up, but she's limping, slowing us down. The footfalls are closer, and I see it again. That faceless thing, gliding between trees, closer every blink. I fire the rifle, the shot echoing, but it doesn't flinch. We're in a life-and-death sprint, and we're losing. There's a clearing ahead, the same one with the bone spirals. I don't want to go there, but Kasia's dragging me, saying it's our only chance. The ground's soft, like it's breathing, and the bones are glowing faintly, unnatural. Kasia's chanting something, words I don't know, and I'm yelling at her to stop. The thing's right behind us now, its presence like ice in my veins. I turn, fire again, and it staggers, first time it's reacted. We stumble past the clearing, finding a narrow trail. The wail's fainter, like we've gained ground, but Kasia's ankle's worse, and I'm carrying her now. The trail leads to a river, fast and wide. There's an old rope bridge, half-rotted, swaying in the wind. It's our only way out, but it looks like a death trap. Kasia's begging me to cross, saying the thing won't follow. I don't trust it, but the footfalls are back, closer than ever. We step onto the bridge, boards creaking, ropes fraying. Halfway across, the thing appears on the bank, watching. My heart's screaming we won't make it, but I keep moving, Kasia's weight pulling at me. The far side's close, but the bridge shakes, like something's clawing it from below. We hit the far bank, collapsing in the mud, the bridge swaying behind us. I'm Leland Warwick, and my chest heaving, but the thing's still there, faceless, on the other side. It doesn't cross, just watches, like it's memorizing us. Kasia's crying, her ankle swollen, but she's alive. I'm thinking we've won, that we've outrun the horror. The river's loud, drowning out the forest's wail, and for a second, I let myself hope. Sumter's cursed woods can't touch us here. But then I see Kash's notebook, clutched in her hands, pages flapping open. The drawings, they're moving, shifting into new shapes, and my stomach twists. Kash's muttering again, that same chant from the clearing, and her eyes aren't right, glassy, like she's not here. I grab her shoulders, shouting her name, but she pulls away, holding the notebook like it's sacred. It's not done, she says, voice flat. I'm confused, then horrified, as she opens the whiskey bottle, the one from the cabin, and pours it over the notebook. The liquid's not whiskey. It's thick, red, like blood. The smell's vile, and the pages start to smoke. The scary truth hits. Kash is not a victim. She's part of this, tied to whatever's haunting us. I back away, rifle up, demanding answers. She laughs, a sound that's not hers, and says she didn't choose this. The woods chose me, she whispers, and I remember her sketches, the faceless figure, the cabin. She's been drawing it since we got here, feeding it somehow. The locals' myths flash back. Wendigo's breath needs a vessel, someone to carry its curse. Kasha was never just tagging along. She was drawn here, like me, but for a darker reason. The disturbing realization cuts deep. I trusted her, and that was my deadly mistake. The thing across the river moves, gliding toward the bridge, and Kasha's chanting louder, the notebook glowing now. I'm screaming at her to stop, but she's gone, lost to whatever's in her head. I fire at the figure, but it's pointless. It's not the real threat. Kasha is. I lunge for the notebook, trying to rip it away, but she's strong, unnaturally so. We wrestle, tumbling into the mud, and the knife, the one I found, falls from my pocket. She grabs it, eyes wild, and slashes at me, cutting my arm. The pain's sharp, but the horror's worse. My friend's trying to kill me. I kick her off, scrambling back, but the bridge is shaking again, boards snapping. The figure's halfway across, its presence choking the air. Kash is on her knees, slicing her own hand, smearing blood on the notebook's pages. It's complete, she says, and the ground rumbles, like the forest's waking up. I'm out of options, out of time. I grab the rifle, aim at her, and hesitate. She's Kasha, my friend. But she's not anymore. I fire, the shot hitting her chest, and she collapses, the notebook falling into the river, washing away. The figure stops, then vanishes like it was never there. The whale's gone, the air clear, but I'm not relieved. I'm kneeling by Kasha, her blood mixing with the mud, her eyes empty. She's dead, and I killed her. The tragedy's crushing. I came here to escape, to live free, but I've lost everything. I stumble away, following the river, hoping it leads to a road. Hours later, I hit a highway, flagged down a trucker. He says I'm lucky. No one survives those woods. I don't feel lucky. Back in Sumter, the locals don't ask questions, just nod like they know. I leave the cabin behind, but the knife's still in my pocket, its carvings faded but heavy. I'm haunted, not by the thing in the woods, but by Kasha's laugh, her betrayal. The twist I never saw coming. The evil wasn't just the forest or the myth, it was her, and I brought her here. I'm alive, but the horror's carved into me, and I'll never outrun it. I drive out of Oregon, swearing never to go off-grid again, but deep down, I know the woods aren't done with me. Waves crash against the rocks below my cliffside cabin, the sound relentless, like it's trying to claw its way inside. I'm Daphne Corin, 41 years old, and I've just moved to Yachits, Oregon, to live off-grid and leave my old life in Salem behind. The cabin's a weathered thing, perched above the Pacific with no electricity, just solar lanterns and a propane stove. I'm here for solitude, divorce, burnout, the works. My only neighbors are the seals barking on the shore and the endless trees creeping up the hill. Locals in town muttered about this sea widow, a myth of a spirit who lures folks to the deep. I brushed it off as tourist bait, but their faces stayed grim. I've got a friend staying with me for a bit, Torrin Vale, 36, a quiet guy I met at a foraging class. He's a loner, all flannel and calloused hands, who ditched his carpentry job to live raw. He's outside now, splitting driftwood for the fire, his axe glinting in the dusk. I'm inside, sorting seeds for the garden I plan to start. Carrots, kale, stuff to keep me alive. The cabin's cozy, but it's got this damp chill, like the ocean's seeping through the walls. I keep a hunting knife handy, more for peace of mind than anything else. Torin lugs in an armful of wood, grinning about a weird find on the beach. A glass bottle with a cork, half buried in the sand. Looks old, he says, setting it on the table. It's cloudy, with something dark sloshing inside, not water. I joke about it being pirate rum, but the way it catches the light bugs me. Yatchet's is quaint, all art galleries and tidipools, but it's got a dark edge, shipwrecks, missing fishermen, stories that don't add up. I tell myself it's just the vibe of a small town. Night settles in, and we're by the fire, the cabin creaking under the wind. Torin's whittling a piece of driftwood into a fish, his knife flicking off curls of wood. I'm reading a battered guide on coastal plants, but my eyes keep drifting to that bottle. It's probably nothing, just junk washed ashore, but it feels out of place, like it's watching us. The horror's subtle, just a prickle on my neck, but I lock the door anyway, double-checking the latch. Torin notices my fidgeting and chuckles. City nerves still? I roll my eyes, but he's not wrong. Salem was all traffic and deadlines. Here, it's just us and the sea. Still, the quiet's unsettling, like it's hiding something. I pour tea from a thermos, trying to shake the feeling. The locals' warnings linger. Don't walk the beach at night. Don't trust the tides. I laugh it off, but I keep the knife close, just in case. Torin's whittling gets faster, the fish taking shape, its eyes too big, too real. The cabin's got one bedroom, so I'm on a cot by the fire, Torin on a mat near the door. Moonlight spills through the window, glinting off the bottle on the table. I'm half asleep when I hear it. A low hum, not the waves, coming from outside. It's faint, like a voice underwater, and it makes my skin crawl. I tell myself it's seals or wind, but I'm wide awake now, staring at the ceiling. Torin's snoring, oblivious, his carved fish on the floor, staring right at me. Morning's gray, fog blanketing the coast. I'm up, brewing coffee on the stove, but the hum's still in my head, like a bad dream that won't quit. Torin's outside, checking the solar panels, acting like nothing's wrong. I step onto the porch, scanning the beach below. There's something down there, marks in the sand, not footprints, but long, curving lines, like something dragged itself ashore. The disturbing feeling hits hard. Yatchet's isn't just quiet. It's waiting. Fog so thick I can barely see the cliff's edge as I scrub mold off the cabin's siding. I'm Daphne Corin, and this off-grid life in Yatchet's is already testing me. The damp's relentless, creeping into everything. My clothes, my books, even my mood. Torin's down on the beach, scavenging more driftwood, but he's been weird since yesterday, quieter, like something's eating at him. The solar panels are barely charging in this gloom, and the propane's lower than I'd like. The horror isn't some monster yet. It's the slow grind of isolation, the way the sea seems to whisper, "You don't belong here." I'm hauling water from the rain barrel when Torin trudges up, his face pale, holding that creepy glass bottle from the beach. "Found something else," he says, voice low, and points to the sand below. Those dragging marks I saw are back, deeper now, stretching from the tittle-line to the rocks. They're not random, too deliberate, like a pattern. I try to laugh, say it's just seaweed or crabs, but my gut's twisting. The sea widow myth pops into my head. Locals said she marks the shore before claiming someone. It's disturbing, and I hate how it sticks. We decide to check the marks closer, a dumb move in hindsight. The beach is all jagged rocks and kelp, the air salty and sour. The marks lead to a cave, half hidden by the tide. Torin's all for exploring, but I'm hesitant. Caves flood fast here. He insists, saying we need to know what's going on. Inside, it's dark, the walls slick with algae. My flashlight catches something, scratches on the rock, like claws, and a pile of shells arranged in a circle. It's creepy, like a shrine. Torin's too quiet, staring at the shells like they mean something. Back at the cabin, I'm shaken, and Torin's not helping. He's fiddling with that bottle, turning it over, the dark stuff inside sloshing. I snap at him to toss it, but he gets defensive, says it's important. I'm starting to regret letting him stay. The knife's on the table, and I move it closer, just in case. We're low on food, so I decide I'll drive to Yatchet's Market tomorrow, a 15-minute trip. Torin volunteers to go instead, but his vibe's off, and I don't trust him alone. The scary part? I'm not sure I trust myself either. Night falls, and the hum's back, louder, like it's right outside. I'm by the fire, trying to read, but my eyes keep darting to the window. Torin's whittling again, another fish, its mouth open like it's screaming. He's muttering under his breath, words I can't catch. I ask what's wrong, and he just stares, then says, "The sea talks, Daphne." My skin crawls. I lock the door, check the windows, but the cabin feels like a cage. The bottle's on the shelf, and I swear it's glowing faintly, like it's alive. I'm kicking myself for not throwing it back into the ocean. I'm up late, sketching the shell circle in my journal to make sense of it, when I notice Torin's gone. His mat's empty, his boots missing. Panic hits. I grab the knife and step outside, calling his name. The fog's thick, but I see him on the beach, standing by the water, the bottle in his hand. He's not moving, just staring at the waves. The hum's deafening now, and I realize it's not the sea. It's voices, layered, chanting something I can't understand. The horror's sinking in. Torin's not just acting weird. He's part of whatever's happening. I'm back inside, heart racing, debating whether to drag him back or bolt the door and wait till morning. The knife's in my hand, and I'm cursing myself for coming here, for thinking I could handle this. The waves are louder, like they're laughing, and the marks on the beach are fresh in my mind. I check the bottle on the shelf, and it's warm to the touch, the dark liquid swirling on its own. Something's coming, and I'm not ready. I sit by the fire, knife ready, listening for Torin's footsteps, praying he's still the guy I thought I knew. I'm frozen by the cabin window, knife in hand, staring at Torin's silhouette on the beach. I'm Daphne Corin, and the hum's turned into a chorus of whispers, like the ocean's talking in tongues. Torin's still out there, holding that cursed bottle, waves lapping at his boots. I shout his name, but the wind swallows it. My heart's pounding. This isn't just him being weird. It's wrong, deeply wrong. The Sea Widow myth feels alive, and the horror's clawing at me. I grab a lantern and head down the cliff path, cursing my stupidity, but needing to know what's got him. The beach is freezing, the sand sucking at my shoes. Torin's closer now, and he's not alone. There's a shape in the water, tall, draped in kelp, its head tilted like it's listening. My stomach drops. It's not human. I hiss at Torin to move, but he turns, and his eyes are empty, like he's sleepwalking. "She's here," he says, voice flat, pointing at the thing. The bottle's uncorked, and that dark liquid's dripping into the sea, glowing sickly green. The scary reality hits. Whatever's in that bottle's calling her. I grab his arm, yanking him back, but he's heavy, like he's rooted. The shape in the water moves closer, its outline sharpening. Long limbs, no face, just a void where one should be. My lantern flickers, and the whispers spike, words like surrender and deep. I'm screaming at Torin to snap out of it, but he shoves me, hard. I stumble, the knife slipping into the sand. The horror's real now, this isn't a myth. It's the Sea Widow, and she's not just a story. I scramble for the knife, my hands shaking as the thing glides toward shore. Back on my feet, I'm dragging Torin up the path, but he's fighting me, muttering about her voice. The cliff's steep, and my lantern's barely cutting through the fog. I glance back, the shape's at the tittle-line, still, but I feel its gaze, like needles in my skin. The marks in the sand are everywhere now, curling around us like a net. I'm kicking myself for not burning that bottle the second we found it. Torin's slowing, his weight pulling me down, and I'm terrified he's not coming back, not as himself. We reach the cabin, and I slam the door, bolting it. Torin's on the floor, panting, his hands stained with that green glow. I demand answers, but he's babbling about the cave, the shells, how she spoke to him there. The disturbing truth sinks in. He's not just spooked, he's hers. I grab the bottle from his hand, and it's ice cold now, the liquid still swirling. I want to smash it, but something stops me, like it's daring me. Outside, the whispers are louder, circling the cabin, and the windows rattle like something's pressing against them. I'm checking the locks when Torin lunges, grabbing for the bottle. We wrestle, crashing into the table, his carved fish scattering. He's strong, too strong, his nails digging into my wrist. "You can't stop her," he yells, and I see it. His eyes aren't empty anymore. They're hers, dark and endless. I kick him off, clutching the bottle, and back toward the fire. The knife's in my hand again, but I don't want to use it. The horror's choking me, my friend's gone, and I'm alone with whatever he's become. The cabin's shaking now, not just the wind. Something's outside, scraping the walls, slow and deliberate. I look out the window, and there she is, the Sea Widow, standing on the cliff's edge, kelp trailing like hair. She's not moving, but the air's thick with her presence, like drowning on dry land. Torin's on his knees, chanting her name. Althea, he calls her. My blood's ice. I grab a backpack, stuffing in essentials, knowing we can't stay. The terror's clear. She's here for us, and Torin's already hers. I'm not sure if I'm saving him or myself, but I've got to try. The cabin's walls are shaking, and that scraping's turned into a pounding, like the Sea Widow's trying to claw her way in. I'm Daphne Corrin, and my hands are slick with sweat as I grip the knife, the cursed bottle stuffed in my backpack. Torin's on the floor, chanting Althea like a prayer, his eyes black as the ocean. The air's thick with that sour, kelp stench, and the horror's suffocating. I yank him up, screaming we've got to run, but he's limp, like he's already half gone. The only way out is the cliff path to the truck, but with her out there, it's a suicide mission. Still, staying's worse. I drag Torin to the door, my lantern flickering like it's scared too. I swing it open, and the fog's so dense I can't see the cliff's edge. The Sea Widow, Althea, stands there, her kelp-draped form swaying. No face, just a void that pulls at me. My heart's in my throat, but I shove Torin forward, knife raised. The path's narrow, rocks crumbling underfoot, and she's following, gliding without sound. The whispers are deafening, chanting my name now, not just his. It's scary as hell, like she's in my head, promising the deep. I keep moving, Torin stumbling, muttering her name. We're halfway to the truck when Torin collapses, clawing at the ground like he's digging for her. I'm yelling, begging him to move, but he turns, and his face, it's not his. His mouth's too wide, teeth sharp, like hers. I stumble back, and he lunges, grabbing for the bottle in my pack. I swing the knife, grazing his arm, and he howls, not human. The horror's real. He's hers, fully now. I run, leaving him, tears burning my eyes. The truck's close, but the fog's alive, curling around me like hands. I hear her behind me, her presence like a weight on my chest. I reach the truck, keys shaking in my hand. The engine roars, and I'm peeling out, tires screeching on the gravel. The rear view shows nothing but fog, but I feel her, like she's riding the wind. The road's a blur, twists and turns along the coast, and I'm praying for Yachet's lights. Then the bottle in my pack starts humming, low and sick, like it's calling her. I swerve, nearly hitting a tree, and realize the scary truth. I'm not escaping. She's tied to the bottle, and I'm carrying her with me. My only shot's to ditch it, but where? The ocean's her domain. I spot a pull-off near a rocky outcrop, waves crashing below. I stop, grab the bottle, and run to the edge. The fog parts, and she's there, on the rocks, closer than ever. My skin's crawling, but I hurl the bottle into the sea, screaming, "Take it!" It sinks, and for a second, the whispers stop. I'm gasping, thinking I've won, when the ground shakes, a low rumble like the ocean's angry. Torin's voice echoes, not from behind, but below, from the water. Daphne, join us. The horror's crushing. He's gone, and she's not done. I sprint back to the truck, flooring it. The road's empty, but the fog's thicker, headlights useless. I'm shaking, knife on the seat, when something slams the truck's roof, hard. Claw marks rake the metal, and I swerve, heart racing. She's not gone, she's pissed. I remember the local stories. Althea doesn't let go. I'm driving blind, the coast road curving toward town, when I see it. A bridge over a river, narrow and old. If I can cross it, maybe the running water stops her, like in the myths. It's a long shot, but I'm out of options. The pounding's louder, and the truck's shaking like it's falling apart. I hit the bridge, boards rattling, and the pounding stops. I glance back, nothing, just fog. My chest heaving, and I'm almost at the other side when the engine dies. The truck coasts, silent, and the whispers are back, louder, inside the cab. The bottle's gone, but she's here, her presence choking me. I grab the knife and jump out, running across the bridge's last stretch. Town's close. I see lights, but my legs are heavy, like I'm wading through water. The terrifying truth hits. I'm not outrunning her. She's in me now, and I don't know how to fight it. I stumble into Yachits, legs burning, the bridge behind me. I'm Daphne Corin, and the town's quiet, streetlights flickering like they're mocking me. The whispers are softer but still there, curling in my head like smoke. I'm safe, I tell myself, collapsing outside the market, knife still in hand. A fisherman spots me, calls for help, and soon I'm in a diner, wrapped in a blanket, sipping coffee. The locals don't ask much, just exchange looks, like they know Althea's name. The horror's not gone, though. I feel her, like a splinter in my soul. My mistake was thinking I could outrun the sea. I tell the sheriff about Torin, the cabin, the bottle, but I leave out her. He nods, says they'll search, but his eyes say he's heard this before. I'm shaking, replaying it all. Torin's changed face, the bottle's glow, the marks. I should have smashed it day one, never brought it inside. The scary truth sinks in. I invited her in, not Torin. He was just collateral, a loner she used to get to me. The fisherman mutters about the sea widow, how she picks those who run from pain. My divorce, my escape, it was a beacon for her. I'm at the motel, trying to sleep, but the mirror's my enemy. My reflection's off, eyes too dark, skin too pale. I splash water on my face, but the whispers spike, saying, "Stay." I'm terrified, realizing the twist. The bottle wasn't her anchor, it was a trick. She's in me, has been since I touched it. I grab the knife, thinking I can cut her out, but my hand won't move, like she's holding it. The horror's deep now. I'm not just haunted, I'm hers, a vessel, like Torin was. I scream, smashing the mirror, glass cutting my knuckles. The sheriff drives me to the cabin next day, saying they found Torin's body on the beach, throat slashed, the knife I left behind in his hand. They think I did it, but they can't prove it. I'm numb, the tragedy crushing me. He was my friend, and I let him drown in her. The cabin's empty, but the shell circles still in the cave, glowing faintly. I burn my journal, hoping it severs her hold, but the whispers laugh. My deadly mistake was coming here, thinking solitude was freedom. Althea is not a myth. She's the sea, and I'm part of her now. I leave Yachits, driving inland, away from the coast. The knife's in my bag, stained with my blood, not Torin's. I can't ditch it. It's like the bottle, alive. Every mile, I feel her, whispering about the deep, promising peace if I return. I'm fighting it, but my dreams are waves, pulling me under. The twist cuts deepest. I didn't escape evil people or myths. I became them. Torin's death, my survival, it's all her design. I'm alive, but I'm not me anymore, and the ocean's always calling. I stop at a gas station, staring at the horizon. A kid asks if I'm okay, and I smile, but my voice isn't mine. It's hers, soft and cold. I drive on, knowing I can't go home. The tragedy's final. I wanted to live free, but I'm her prisoner, carrying her wherever I go. Yachits is behind me, but the sea's in my veins, and I'm terrified I'll end up back there, walking into the waves. The locals were right. Don't trust the tides. I didn't, and now I'm lost forever. I'm on the road, but the whispers are louder, and my hands steer west, toward the coast. I fight it, but it's like fighting the tide. Althea's won, and the horror's mine to carry. I pass a sign for the ocean, and my heart sinks. I'm not driving anymore. She is. The knife hums in my bag, and I know the truth. I'm not escaping. I'm returning to her, and this time, I won't come back. Snow dusts the pines outside my cabin, the Wallowa Mountains looming like silent judges. I'm Soren Hadley, 38 years old, and I've just settled into this off-grid life in Joseph, Oregon, chasing peace after a messy life in Eugene. The cabin's a sturdy log setup, no power, just a generator and a wood stove to keep me warm. I ditched my tech job, my ex's drama, and the city's hum for this: silence, solitude, and a chance to rebuild. Locals at the Joseph Mercantile whispered about the Bone Keeper, a myth of a spirit guarding the mountains, punishing greed. I smirked, but their eyes held a warning I can't shake. My cousin, Maris Vale, 32, is bunking with me for a bit. She's a wiry photographer, always chasing the perfect shot, who left her gallery job to capture the wild. She's outside, fiddling with her camera, snapping the frost-covered ridges. I'm inside, stacking firewood, my breath fogging in the chill. The cabin's got a rugged charm, but it's old, with scratches on the doorframe that look too deep for animals. I keep a hatchet nearby, telling myself it's for chopping kindling, not nerves. Maris bursts in, cheeks red, holding a small, carved stone she found by the creek. "Check this out, Soren. Looks ancient," she says, turning it over. It's smooth, etched with jagged lines, like a map or a rune. I joke it's just a kid's art project, but it feels heavy, like it's sucking the warmth from the room. Joseph's a quiet town, all ranches and art studios, but it's got a haunted edge, old mining camps, vanished prospectors. The horror's subtle, just a prickle, but I set the stone on the mantle, uneasy. Night creeps in, the stove crackling as we eat canned stew. Maris is sorting photos on her laptop, her latest shots of the mountains glowing on the screen. I'm sharpening the hatchet, half listening to the wind howl. The cabin's cozy, but the dark presses against the windows, thick and alive. I catch myself checking the door's lock, twice. The Bone Keeper stories linger, bones found in caves, marked with the same lines as that stone. I tell myself it's folklore, but my pulse says otherwise. Maris notices my fidgeting and laughs. "Spooked already, city slicker?" I roll my eyes, but she's not wrong. Eugene was all noise and neon. Here, the quiet's a presence, watching. I pour coffee from a thermos, trying to settle my nerves. The stone's on the mantle, and I swear it's shifted, like it turned to face us. The locals' warnings echo, "Don't take from the mountains, don't disturb the old places." I brush it off, but the hatchet stays close. The cabin's got one bedroom, so I'm on a cot by the stove, Maris on a sleeping pad near the wall. Moonlight spills through the window, glinting off the stone. I'm drifting off when I hear it. A low rattle, not the wind, coming from outside. It's faint, like bones clacking, and it sets my teeth on edge. I tell myself it's branches or elk, but I'm awake, staring at the ceiling. Maris is out cold, her camera by her side, its lens catching the light like an eye. Morning's crisp, the snow heavier now. I'm up, brewing coffee on the stove, but that rattle's stuck in my head, like a song I can't unhear. Maris is outside, snapping more photos, oblivious. I step onto the porch, scanning the trees. There's something in the snow, marks, not tracks, but sharp, angular lines, like the ones on the stone. The disturbing feeling hits. Joseph's mountains aren't just beautiful. They're alive, and they're watching us. Snow's piling up outside, and I'm wrestling with the generator, which keeps coughing like it's got a grudge. I'm Soren Hadley, and this off-grid life in Joseph is already a slog. The cabin's freezing, the wood stove barely keeping up, and my fingers are numb from tinkering. Maris is inside, editing photos, but she's been off, snapping at me over nothing, staring at that carved stone like it's whispering to her. The horror's not some boogeyman yet. It's the way the mountains feel alive, watching every move. Those marks in the snow I saw, they're back, closer to the cabin now. I'm hauling firewood when Maris calls me in, her voice sharp. She's holding the stone, turning it under the lantern, and the etched lines seem to glow, like they're alive. "Soren, this isn't random," she says, showing me a photo she took, a rock face near the creek, covered in the same jagged marks. My stomach twists. It's disturbing, like the mountain's writing its own story. I tell her to put the stone back where she found it, but she refuses, says it's part of her work. I'm starting to think bringing her here was a bad call. We're low on supplies, and the snow's making the roads dicey. I decide we'll hike to the creek to check out that rock face Maris photographed, maybe return the stone while we're at it. Dumb move, looking back. The trail's a mess, snow crunching underfoot, and the air's so still it feels like the world's holding its breath. Maris is ahead, camera clicking, but she's muttering to herself, words I can't catch. The marks are everywhere now, on trees, in the snow, like a trail leading us. The scary part? They feel deliberate, like we're being lured. We reach the creek, and the rock face is worse than the photo, covered in carvings, deep and old, some stained dark, like blood. There's a pile of bones nearby, small, like birds or squirrels, stacked in a pattern. I laugh it off, say it's hunters or kids, but my voice shakes. Maris kneels, touching the bones, and I swear her eyes go blank for a second. "The Bone Keeper's real," she whispers, and I'm kicking myself for ignoring the local stories. The horror's creeping in. This isn't just a place. It's a trap. Back at the cabin, the generator's dead for good, and the cold's biting. I'm chopping wood, trying to stay calm, while Maris edits her photos, the stone beside her. I snap at her to ditch it, but she gets weirdly protective, clutching it like a kid with a toy. I'm debating driving to Joseph for supplies, a 30-minute trek, but the snow's heavy, and Maris doesn't want to leave. "We're fine," she says, but her tone's off, like she's talking to someone else. The hatchet's in my hand, and I'm keeping it close, just in case. Night falls, and the rattle's back, louder, like bones clattering right outside. I'm by the stove, sharpening the hatchet, while Maris stares at her laptop, her latest photos zoomed in on those carvings. "They move," she says, voice flat, and I lean over. Holy hell, she's right. The lines in the photo shift, like they're rewriting themselves. My skin's crawling, and I slam the laptop shut. The stone's on the table now, and I swear it's warmer than it should be. I lock the door, but the cabin feels like it's shrinking, the mountains pressing in. I'm up late, sketching the bone pile in my notebook to make sense of it, when I notice Maris is gone. Her sleeping pad's empty, her boots by the door. Panic hits. I grab the hatchet and lantern, calling her name. The snow's fresh, but there's no tracks, just those angular marks, leading into the trees. The rattle's deafening now, mixed with a low hum, like a chant. The disturbing truth sinks in. Maris isn't just lost. Something's got her, and I'm not sure I can bring her back. I'm standing there, debating whether to follow or barricade myself in, when the lantern flickers, and the marks in the snow start to glow. I'm crunching through snow, hatchet in one hand, lantern in the other, chasing those glowing marks into the trees. I'm Soren Hadley, and my heart's hammering. Maris is gone, and the Wallowa Mountains feel like they're closing in. The rattle's louder, a sick clatter of bones, and the air's heavy with a metallic tang, like old blood. I'm calling her name, but the forest swallows it. Those carvings from the creek flash in my mind, and the Bone Keeper myth isn't just a story anymore. The horror's real, and it's got my cousin. Something's deeply wrong, and I'm terrified I'm next. The marks lead to a clearing, and I freeze. Maris is there, kneeling in the snow, the carved stone in her hands. She's chanting, low and guttural, not her voice. Around her, bones, hundreds of them, animal and maybe not, form a spiral, glowing faintly. My lantern catches a shape at the clearing's edge, tall, hunched, draped in pelts, with antlers that aren't quite right, like they're growing from its skull. No face, just a hollow where one should be. My blood's ice. This is the Bone Keeper, and it's watching us. The scary reality hits. We didn't find it. It found us. I shout Maris's name, but she doesn't flinch, her eyes locked on the stone, now pulsing with light. I step forward, hatchet raised, but the ground shifts, like it's breathing. The Keeper moves, not walking but gliding, its pelts dragging in the snow. My lantern flickers, and the rattle spikes, drowning out my thoughts. I'm yelling at Maris to run, but she turns, and her face, God, it's not hers. Her eyes are too wide, her mouth twisted, like she's wearing someone else's skin. The horror's choking me. She's not my cousin anymore. I lunge for her, trying to grab the stone, but she hisses, swiping at me with nails that feel like claws. I stumble back, the hatchet slipping in my grip. The Keeper's closer, its presence like a weight, whispering in my head, words like offer and debt. I'm kicking myself for letting her keep that stone, for coming here at all. The cabin's miles away, and my phone's useless. No signal, just static. The disturbing truth sinks in. We're alone, and this thing doesn't just want Maris. It wants me too. I drag Maris to her feet, but she's fighting, stronger than she should be. The Keeper's circling now, the bones in the spiral rattling like they're alive. I swing the hatchet at it, more out of panic than sense, but it doesn't react, just tilts its head, like I'm amusing it. Maris is screaming, not words, just sounds, and the stone's burning her hands, leaving marks. I'm pulling her toward the trees, but the snow's alive, tripping us, the marks glowing brighter. The terror's clear, we're not escaping. We're being hunted. We stumble into the forest, branches snapping at us like teeth. Maris is slowing, her chants turning to sobs, but she won't let go of the stone. I'm begging her to drop it, but she's gone, lost to whatever's in her head. The Keeper's behind us, its rattle following, steady and close. I spot a cave ahead, a black gash in the mountain. It's a bad idea, but it's shelter, maybe a chance to hide. We duck inside, the air damp and sour, and I realize too late. The walls are covered in those carvings, pulsing like a heartbeat. The horror's worse here. We didn't escape. We walked into its lair. Maris collapses, clutching the stone, and the keepers at the cave mouth, blocking the way out. My lantern's dying, and the rattle's so loud it's in my bones. I'm gripping the hatchet, knowing it's useless against this thing. Maris is whispering. It's Ode, and I'm terrified she means me. The cave's closing in, the carvings moving, forming shapes, faces, maybe, screaming. I'm out of plans, out of hope. The Bone Keeper's here, and it's not leaving without what it came for. I'm not sure if I'm saving Maris or myself, but I've got to try something. The cave's walls pulse with those carvings, and the Bone Keeper's shadow fills the entrance, its rattle shaking my bones. I'm Soren Hadley, clutching the hatchet. Maris crumpled beside me, still gripping that cursed stone. The air's thick with that blood metal stench, and the horror's suffocating. She's not my cousin anymore, and this thing's not letting us go. My lantern's flickering, barely lighting the cave, and I'm yelling at Maris to move. We've got one shot to get out, past that thing, back to the cabin or the truck. The scary truth hits. We're not outrunning it, but I've got to try. I haul Maris up, her body heavy, like she's fighting me and herself. The keeper glides closer, its antlers scraping the cave roof, and I swing the hatchet, more to keep it back than to hit it. The blade passes through air. It's not solid, but its presence is a fist around my heart. We stumble toward the entrance, the carvings glowing brighter, screaming faces in the stone. Maris is muttering, "It's Ode," and I'm terrified she's right. The snow outside's a blur, but I drag her into it, the rattle following like a death knell. We're running through the forest, branches clawing at us, the snow slowing every step. The keeper's behind, not chasing but hurting, its pelts dragging in the snow. Maris trips, the stone slipping from her hands, and I dive for it, thinking if I smash it, this ends. Bad move. It's burning hot, searing my palm, and the keeper's rattle spikes, like I've pissed it off. Maris is screaming now, not at me but at it, begging it to take her instead. The horror's clear. She's not just possessed, she's offering herself. I'm not letting that happen. I shove the stone in my pack and pull Maris along, aiming for the cabin, a mile off. The truck's too far, and the snow's too deep. My legs burn, and Maris is fading, her eyes half hers, half something else. The keeper's closer, its whispers in my head, "Pay the debt." I'm flashing back to the local stories. The Bone Keeper claims those who take from the mountains. That stone was our mistake, and now it's calling in the bill. The cabin's in sight, but the door's open, swinging in the wind. My gut screams we're not alone. We burst inside, and I slam the door, shoving a table against it. The cabin's trashed, photos scattered, the stove cold. Maris collapses, sobbing, and I'm checking windows, hatchet ready. The rattle's outside, circling, and the carvings on the stone in my pack are glowing through the fabric like a beacon. I'm kicking myself for not leaving it in the cave. The horror's relentless. We're trapped, and the keeper's not just after Maris. It wants what we stole. I tell her to stay put and grab the generator's gas can, thinking fire might stop it. The door shakes, not from wind but force, and I pour gas around the room, a desperate plan forming. Maris is chanting again, her voice not hers, and I'm yelling at her to snap out of it. The keeper's antlers scrape the window, and I see it. Its hollow face, bones woven into its pelts, moving like they're alive. I light a match, ready to burn the place down if it gets in, but Maris lunges, knocking the match away. "You can't," she screams, and I realize she's protecting the stone, not us. The terrifying moment hits. I'm fighting her as much as it. There's a narrow back door, and I drag Maris toward it, the front door splintering. We're out, running into the snow, the cabin glowing behind us as the gas catches from the stove's embers. The keeper's rattle follows, undeterred, and I'm aiming for the creek, thinking running water might stop it, like in the myths. The stone's heavy in my pack, and Maris is slowing, her hands bleeding from clawing at herself. The creek's close, but the keeper's closer, its whispers promising rest if I give up. I'm not ready to die, but I'm not sure I can save us both. The creek's rushing ahead, ice along its edges, and I'm dragging Maris through the snow, the Bone Keeper's rattle right behind us. I'm Soren Hadley, and my lungs burn, the stone in my pack like a lead weight. The cabin's burning in the distance, but the keeper's unfazed, its pelts glowing in the dark. I'm thinking if I throw the stone into the creek, it'll break the curse. Maris is barely conscious, muttering about debts, and I'm terrified I've lost her. The horror's crushing. I came to Joseph for freedom, but I've walked us into a nightmare. My mistake was thinking we could take from these mountains and walk away. I reached the creek, kneeling to pull the stone from my pack. It's pulsing, the carvings moving like they're alive, and the keeper stops, watching from the trees. I raise the stone to hurl it, but Maris screams, tackling me. "It's mine," she roars, her voice layered, like the keeper's speaking through her. We're wrestling in the snow, the hatchet lost, and she's strong, clawing at my face. The scary truth hits. She's not just a victim. She's its vessel, chosen the second she touched that stone. I trusted her, and that's my deadly mistake. I shove her off, scrambling for the stone, but she's faster, snatching it and running toward the keeper. I'm screaming her name, but she's gone, kneeling before it, offering the stone like a sacrifice. The keeper's antlers lower, and I swear it's smiling, its hollow face splitting. The ground shakes, bones rising from the snow, forming a cage around Maris. I'm rushing forward, no plan, just desperation, when she turns, her eyes fully black. "You're the dead," she says, and the twist guts me. It's not the stone it wants. It's me, for bringing her here, for disturbing its rest. I grab the hatchet from the snow, swinging at the bone cage, but it's like steel, cutting my hands. Maris is chanting, the stone crumbling in her grip, and the keeper's pelts wrap around her, pulling her into itself. I'm hacking, screaming, but she's gone, swallowed by its form. The rattle stops, and the keeper turns to me, its whisper clear, "Run." I'm stumbling back, the creek freezing under my feet, and I realize the horror. I'm alive because it let me go, but it's not done. I'm marked, like the bones, like Maris. I make it to Joseph, collapsing at the mercantile, bloodied and babbling. The locals don't ask questions, just nod, like they've seen this before. They find no trace of Maris, just ash from the cabin and bones by the creek, too many to count. The tragedy's suffocating. I killed her by coming here, by thinking I could outrun my past. The stone's gone, but my hands are scarred, the carvings etched into my skin. I'm haunted, not by the keeper, but by Maris's last words, her black eyes. I was the debt, and I paid with her life. I leave Joseph, driving west, the hatchet in the passenger seat, its blade stained with my blood. The mountains watch me go, and the rattles faint, but it's there, in my head. The twist is the worst. The evil wasn't just the keeper. It was me, my greed for a new start, my blindness to Maris's change. I'm alive, but I'm not free. The carvings on my hands pulse at night, and I dream of bones, of her voice. The locals were right. Don't take from the mountains. I did, and now I'm theirs forever. I'm on the road, but the scars burn, and my hands twitch like they're not mine. I pass a sign for the Wallowas, and my heart sinks. I'm turning back, not by choice. The keeper's calling, and I'm answering, the hatchet humming beside me. The tragedy's final. I wanted solitude, but I found a debt I can't pay. I'm not Soren anymore. I'm its, and the mountains are waiting.